In today's video, I'm going to be covering my favorite F1 sim racing races during my entire career, giving you an insight and feeling to how I felt during the race and how I feel about it now, looking back multiple years into the past. With that being said though, I'm not going to cover the races that won me the 2017 or the 2018 World Championship. I've already covered those races and those topics on my channel before, and I don't want my content to become repetitive. With all of that being said though, let's jump into the first race. That's going to be 2018 China. So the stage is set here in China. I qualified 5th on the grid while my teammate Daniel Beresnay is on the pole position, as you can see by the timing tower on the left hand side. Backstory for this race: I had just won the first race of the season, in the season opener of course, in Australia a few moments before this race. So I was going into this race feeling quite confident, but I did know how fast and how competitive Daniel Beresnay was during the practice. So my game plan for this race was to have a phenomenal start and try to get up to a sort of P3, and then I could fight Freddie Rasmussen and Daniel Beresnay for the race win. But on 2018, overtaking was quite possible, but once you got onto a DRS train, it wasn't the easiest. So let's find out how I got on during this race. And I do remember being quite desperate on the race start actually, and I got a phenomenal start. I was able to gain a lot of ground on Fabrizio Donoso ahead, and I have to say he didn't get really the perfect start either, given the fact that Marcel Kiefer, of course in the racing point as well, was able to get alongside him and actually ahead of him going down into turn 1. We did actually have wheel-to-wheel contact with me and Fabrizio, but fortunately I was able to get away with that with no front wing damage. With all that being said though, that did put me on the back foot, because I do remember, yes, okay, this is Tino Nuckaleden in the Williams. He was a phenomenal driver back in the day as well. Basically, he's now getting the opportunity to go sort of into P5, you know. I'm fighting off, trying to hang on to P5, and it's absolutely critical to keep this track position going ahead. So coming out of the first sector, you can see I'm just about ahead of him, and even though we had a really good initial launch, followed up by the contact down to turn 1, somehow we've been able to hang on to the P5 position as Tino tries to go around the outside of us, but we squeeze him a little bit wide. That was legal back in the day with F1 esports rulebooks. So a bit messy, a bit meh, to be honest, on the start. This is actually when my race started to come alive. On lap 6, you can see on the timing tower, I actually went for an overcut compared to my rivals during the race of course, Daniel Beresnay, Freddie Rasmussen, Marcel Kiefer, and Fabrizio Donoso, and that allowed me to open up so much strategy. Back in 2018, you didn't actually have engineers speaking with you during the race, so this was completely my call, my strategy, and it really was something that paid off, as we're going to see later on into the actual China race itself. But this allowed me to have a lap fresher tyres, and now fast forwarding on lap 7, I overcutted both Fabrizio Donoso and Marcel Kiefer, came out of the pit stop ahead of them, and that allowed me to be on the back of Frederick Rasmussen with a lap fresher tyres, overtake him on lap 7. You can see covering off the position, of course, as well, I must say, that Bono Ruiz, Sven Zerner, Martin, and Alvaro Caraton are yet to box because they're doing the alternative strategy. So now I am theoretically into P2 in this race with 1.5 seconds to catch to my teammates. So yeah, actually no, it's lap 8 actually. Oh, okay, because the leaders have gone across the start finish line already. So I'm still on lap 7, but the leaders have started lap 8. 1.5 seconds to Beresnay, but on lap 10 we was able to close in the gap. So we closed, I should be saying, 1.5 seconds in that space of time, and already on lap 10 we've gone from 5th place, contact on lap 1, and then gaining over 1.5 seconds to get ahead of Daniel Beresnay. And I do remember this being one of my best races in F1 esports. Jesus Christ. That's crazy. Go on. That's a great move. So now we're at the end of the race, and actually on lap 14 we extended the lead to 1.6 seconds to Daniel Beresnay. So lap 7 we were 1.5 seconds behind him, lap 10 we overtook him, and lap 14 in the final lap of the race we are 1.6 seconds ahead of him. So for me it was one of my best, if not my best performance in F1 esports, because not only did I get the win, it set me up with so much positive momentum to set up that championship campaign going forward. And if I didn't get the momentum from this race, then I don't really know how the rest of the season could have played out. And we had a great season. I think we won 6 out of 10 races, I think, something like that. And yeah, like, it was a fantastic season for myself, the team, and that momentum that we gained from winning the race, but also having a 1-2 with Mercedes, really was the striking force to gain momentum, gain positivity, and really set ourselves on the forward foot. You can see I'm very happy in the bottom left-hand camera. And yeah, what a race. Definitely positive memories, and really set me up emotionally for the rest of the season. Moving on into the second track, that is actually Singapore, one of my favorite tracks, especially with the old iteration of the circuit. I think the new one is better for racing, but I just love the old feeling of the final sector before, going underneath the grandstand, and it was just super flowing, super technical, especially in a qualifying lap, trying to balance your tyre deg, your tyre temperature. It was bliss. Anyway, back to the point. That Singapore, I felt really nice and really confident going into this race and into the qualifying session as well. The team did a fantastic job trying to set up the car, and it was absolutely bliss, absolutely perfect to drive. That feeling when the car is absolutely at your fingertips and you know exactly what it's going to be doing. That's the confidence and that's the feeling I had going into this race. In qualifying, it was quite strange, actually. It started raining halfway through the outlap, what basically meant first car to start the lap had a massive advantage. Being in the Mercedes pit box meant we were at the start of the pit lane and not at the end of the pit lane, what meant I had to absolutely nail my qualifying lap in a slightly worse track condition compared to other people to get higher on the grid, and that's what I was able to do. Very fortunately as well, as you're going to find out for many reasons during later in the video. But my teammate, bless him, Daniel Bresnay, super fast, super competitive. He just got a bit unlucky with the weather as well. And it wasn't like a humongous gap. I can't remember. It wasn't crazy big, the gap between me and Bresnay during the session. But I was just able to hook it up and get a bit also lucky with the walls, lucky with the track limits sometimes. And that put me P2 on the grid to set up this race. With all that being said, though, the championship implications were, if I won the race and Daniel Bresnay was P5 or below, I would win the championship here in Singapore and win it 2 races early. So I was absolutely determined to get past Enzo Benito. So we both actually hit the wall going on into this end of Sector 1. You can see going around the outside. And this was one of my best moves in F1 esports. You can see we broke so late, we was able to go clean around the outside of him. Enzo Benito is so fast, so competitive, and probably one of the more unlucky drivers in the F1 esports sort of career that he had. Because he never really was able to get the results that I feel he deserved. But anyway, back to the point, able to outbrake him around the outside, and then you can see we're starting to clear off into the distance as well. This is such a, not a controversial moment in F1 esports, but it's such a crazy moment in F1 esports. You can see I've cleared off ahead. I've actually been able to pull over a second gap in the first lap of the race alone, just showing the confidence I had with the setup. But this is where Benito got so unlucky, and I got very lucky to avoid the same fate as Benito got. You can see with my mouse cursor, if you can see it on the screen, that there is actually front wing debris on the racing track and just about on the racing line. I was fortunate enough to avoid it. I wasn't actually knowing it was there. I just got lucky and wasn't driving the same line as Enzo Benito was at the moment. But anyway, he drives over it and gets the puncture. And very unlucky for him. And this was something that probably could have been a massive result in his career. But, you know, he's a fantastic driver, fantastic guy as well, and just got a bit unlucky. You can see we gained 1.3 seconds. So without Benito having the puncture, probably we were 1.1 seconds ahead of him. So in the first lap, we gained 1.1 seconds. And this is just really unlucky for Benito, though. This did help us extend the gap to Caraton a little bit. But you can see that Benito just very unlucky, into the wall, front wing and front tyre gone, nothing much he could do. This is a really interesting part of the race. So on 2018, there was a bit of a glitch in the pit stop that if a car when you was in your pit box, if a car drove past you, you could be held longer than you're meant to be, what meant you could lose the track position. So Caraton was about 3 seconds behind me before going into the pit box, and that was the perfect window that the glitch would happen with. So again, as I alluded during the China race, you didn't actually have race engineers. So I made my own decision during the race to go a lap longer than Caraton, even at the risk of being undercutted. So then I didn't have that glitch, and I could control my own race and control my own fate a lot more than if I was susceptible to a glitch, knowing probably that I was going to get undercutted like this and Caraton was going to gain the race lead. The way I saw it, that was better than losing the race lead and having the same freshness of tyres, or possibly falling even further behind. Because you can see Marcel Kiefer is not that far behind. He's about a second behind. So with that glitch and keeping that in mind, I could have easily gone from P1 to P3 during the pit stop phase. Like this though, I have 1 lap fresh of tyres around Singapore, what is huge, and I can control my own fate and try to overtake Caraton again. You can see at the moment we're 7 tenths behind him before we cut on to lap 9, and we are all over the back of Caraton, and oh boy, I was hungry for this. I was absolutely on absolute fire on this race. I remember it so well because I came out behind Caraton and I knew that if I overtook him, I could win the championship on this race. So you can see I was absolutely determined to make this maneuver back up. Coming out into sector 3, we set him up and we go around the outside of him in the braking zone into the sort of stadium section of this track. And now we are back into the theoretical race lead. Of course, Kimi, Ollie, Michael and Graham Carroll are yet to box on the alternative strategy, but we are back into the race lead. This is heartbreak though. Daniel Beresne got into P4 on the final lap of the race, denying me the opportunity to win the championship on this race. Of course, a fantastic race for him though, starting down in 11th and finishing P4. But for me, was one of the best paces and the best sort of momentum I had during a race, and we was able to overtake Caraton and build a 3.8 second gap to him in this race. And you can see this is actually quite an interesting point. If you watch my face cam at the bottom left hand side of the screen, there was a broadcast sort of monitor not too far away from where I was driving, and you could see I'm watching it during the lap to visualize where Daniel Beresne is, because on lap 13 I was under the assumption that I'm going to win the championship. On lap 15 that's been snatched away from me, so you can see coming across the line, winning the race in a very nice fashion with a 3.8 second lead. But I'm not happy. You can see I'm just not really having that many positive emotions, because I knew I could have won the championship on this race, but Daniel Beresne did a fantastic job denying me that opportunity. This was the season standings after that race though, and you can see we had 171 points versus Daniel Beresne in 98, and this was my best season of F1 esports. Obvious statement, I know, but yeah, really I put everything into the season, and I'll be happy to go into a future video why, to be honest, I wasn't as good on future seasons, but yeah, this was the peak of my ability, you know. And I'm really proud looking back on that season that we, like I say, I think we won 6 out of 10 races. We was only off the podium 1 time in the whole, no, 2 times in the whole season. So out of 10 races, we only missed out on the podium twice. So yeah, phenomenal, and I'm really so proud of that whole season, you know. Now we are taking a trip to 2021. I've joined Ferrari since 2018. Of course, I stayed with Mercedes during 2018, 2019, 2020, and 2021. I made the switch to join Ferrari and join the red team. Qualifying was really difficult actually during this day. I remember it really well. To show you a little bit of detail about this. So yeah, to show you a bit of detail about this, I actually had a failure within the equipment that we had at the factory. So in this sort of control box, you get a load of the wires that are controlling the like vibration motors for the actual wheel, so you can feel what's happening. One of them short-circuited during my practice warming up for qualifying, and that basically meant the wheel went into a safety mode, and didn't give me the full force feedback experience that I was used to. So driving qualifying, I only had a wheel that had limited force feedback, and majority of it was just resistance based feeling and not giving me like the feeling of a curb, the bumps on the track. So really for me, I was super proud to be in P14 on this race. Let me just put the wheel down. So yeah, I was really proud to be on P14 in this race. But before the race, oh, I messed up big time. I messed up big time. So I tried to fix the issue actually. Okay, I'm going to bring back the wheel. I tried to fix the issue myself. Big mistake. And unplugged the wire that was giving the issues. But I broke it. I broke the actual wheel trying to fix the issue. So we didn't have a spare wheel at the facility at the time. But Amos Cerrito, bless his heart, fantastic guy, and was like helping to run the team back in 2021 in Ferrari. He literally drove home, got his wheel from his own wheelbase, gave it to me so I could drive this race. So I thought I wasn't even going to start that race, to be honest. I thought I was DNS, did not start for this race because I didn't have the equipment to continue. So big mistake on my part, and I learned on that day, don't try to fix my own equipment. Okay, now into the race. Now that I've given you the backstory on that I had to replace the wheel and of course had the wheel issue during qualifying. This track I've always felt good on, especially in time management. Lap 1, we were determined to make up positions. You can see in the background, we actually sent it in the middle of cars. It's quite difficult to see. You can actually just about see my car here, that I'm in the middle of Daniel Haddad and also Sebastian Job. We're down the middle. We sent it between two cars and we went from P14 to P12 in that situation, and that was absolutely beautiful, and that was able to get us into P12. In this race, there's not that many footages of me battling people because the camera crew of course were focused on the championship battle between Fredrik Rasmussen and Jarno Ottmar. But I'll do my best to keep you in the loop about what's happening. So, lap 3, we were now starting to already think about the undercut strategy, because look how many people are on the medium tires, and around Mexico, you can make it such a big advantage by taking the undercut. So, later on in the race, you will see that we initiated that strategy and we did go for the undercut. Lap 5, we're still in P12 behind our teammate of David Tinitza, and we are really, to be honest, in quite a strong position right now. Now, lap 14, you can see that we've done our pit stop and we've actually jumped all the way from what was P12 at the time all the way into P7, and that's still with Simon, Philippe and Alvaro Caraton still to box. We are directly behind, of course, Jarno Ottmar, Bari and Freddie Rasmussen. We've got a 2.5 second gap, but we are theoretically P4 in this race at the moment, so we've gained 10 positions from our starting place with that strategy. Lap 20, we did lose out to Danny Moreno, who was doing a fantastic pace, a fantastic race as well. But we are still in P5, but we have quite old tyres comparing to Nicholas Longay behind us, and we need to defend for our life. I think this is quite nice battling here. Oh, they cut away from it. If you know F1 sim racing or F1 esports, you know this is an infamous moment within the championship history. Jarno's famous DRS dummy to Freddie Rasmussen, and probably one of the things I think even Jarno himself said that he credited winning the championship a lot down to this move and gave him momentum going into the championship finale in Brazil, the next race after this. So Jarno moved over, and I saw this live in person because, of course, I'm in P5. I'm only about 2 seconds behind Jarno at this point. So there I am. Look, there's me. Basically, my jaw was on the floor. I saw this happen live, and I was like, hold up. Wait a minute, something ain't right. You know what I mean? Like, I saw Jarno pulling off, and I was like, what's happening? I was like, oh, he's a genius. He's a genius. And he got behind Freddie Rasmussen and then played the first ever DRS chicken. Really, I don't remember someone else doing this at the winning a race anyway, maybe lower down in the field, but this was definitely the first time someone did it and won the race because of it. And then you can see we're just up ahead of Nicholas Longay and only just hanging on into P5. And you're going to see later in the lap, it gets really difficult for me because my tyres were so old at this point that I was actually relying on the leaders not really pushing that much and saving their tyres for a final lap battle to have a chance of keeping up. But the second that they started pushing, you're going to see later in the lap that I lose a lot of ground to them. The gap actually gains to like 1.5 seconds as they go through. You can see it's already up to 8 temps now that they're pushing, and it should go a bit higher on the exit. Okay, it cut away, but on the end of a lap, you can see we are 1.7 seconds away from Danny Moreno now. So that just shows how much of a tire drop off we had and how fortunate we were that the leaders were not pushing so we could keep our P5 position. And yeah, what a comeback though. Starting P14, finishing P5 on that good strategy call. So it was one of my favourites. And we had a lot of hard battling with Nicolas Longuet, defending from him to keep that position as well. Of course, it wasn't shown on the stream. Our fourth race comes to when I'm in 2022 in Ferrari still, and it's at one of my favourite tracks here in Kota. We qualified P6 on the grid. My teammate Fabrizio Donoso at the time had qualified P8, and it's a wet race. Obvious statement, I know, but this is really critical during a wet race, as you're going to see later on in the video. Having teammate sort of priority, having the position of your teammate for the priority in the pit box is absolutely pivotal, and you're going to see why later in the race. But lap 1, turn 1, we're a bit conservative. We're on the inside line, and Lucas and Fabrizio do a fantastic move, especially Lucas. He goes around the outside of both me and Caraton, putting himself up into P5, and we go from P6 to P8 on the first lap, massively losing out in this situation. And yeah, now we are behind Fabrizio Donoso, and why that's such a critical thing in this race is often on the F1 game, there's only one perfect lap to swap from wet tyres to inters. Of course, we're on the wet tyres at the moment. So if I do not get the track position back, my race is really at risk from being ruined because I don't have the optimal strategy. And so it was absolutely critical to get the position back on Fabrizio, and we did do that on the first lap, and we got back ahead of him on the pitch straight at the end of lap 1, starting lap 2. Lap 5 now, you can see people are starting to find their flow, but it's really difficult to overtake. Jarno does a fantastic move here from my memory. I think he goes up the inside or something like that compared to Marcel. Oh no, it was on the next straight that he went up the inside. My apologies. Yeah, okay. Yeah, this is where he did the move. But as I was alluding to earlier, lap 14 now, you can see all the leaders are boxing on one lap because there's just one lap that's better than the rest to be going to the intermediate ties, especially around such a long lap like this here in Kota. You can see I was able to get the pit stop priority from being ahead of Fabrizio again, and that is allowing me to open up my race, especially because two cars who are ahead of us, Marcel Kiefer and Lucas Blakely, have gone a lap longer because their teammates of Bari and also Freddie Rasmussen had the pit stop priority, and you're going to see how much it compromises their race. So going into the pit stop phase, I think I was P7, and now you're going to see at the end of a lap where we're able to filter out. So now, of course, we're not riding on board with me. We're still on board with Jarno, as I think he's going to do a bit of a send. Oh, yeah, go on. I don't think he actually gets the move done. But you can see we went from P7 to P6, and still Yoni Tormina is still yet to box. So theoretically, we are P5. And actually, we're going for a move here. And this is all opened up because of the pit stop strategy. Because we was able to undercut Marcel Kiefer and Lucas Blakely, who are in the background of this video. That's Marcel, and that's Lucas Blakely just behind him. Then Freddie Rasmussen is directly behind Lucas as well. That meant we was able to follow Alvaro Carlton really closely, and we was able to slipstream past him on the straight and then get up into a P4 position. But if I was behind Marcel and Lucas still after the pit stop phase, I definitely wouldn't have been able to overtake Caraton in that situation. Now lap 19, we've got 2.4 seconds to the leaders, and I've got quite a decision to do right here. I knew it was going to become dry at the end of the race, so I had to break the DRS detection from Alvaro Caraton, otherwise risk him re-overtaking me later in the race. Lap 22, we're coming into the box, and you can see we was able to close the gap down to 1.4 seconds. So we had a really nice pace, a really nice feeling in the car during this stint as well, able to gain quite a lot of lap time. But absolutely critical right now. We're going to the dry tires. DRS will be enabled. And it's absolutely pivotal that we're able to get back in the DRS of Jarno so we can follow him and have a chance of getting back into the podium positions. But if we do not get DRS off the back of these three leading cars, the chance of a podium, the chance of a win is gone, and I'll sort of be in no man's land for the rest of the race, and that's quite boring, to be honest. But this is where I got really lucky. I got so lucky that Nicholas Longuet has actually stayed out and gone longer on his pit stop strategy, just trying something, trying to risk something on the intermediate tyres. But that meant that Jarno got held up in the final sector. So did Bari, so did Thomas, and that meant that I'm able just about to sneak past Nicholas Longuet right now, and going into the first sector, I am literally 1 second away from Jarno Otmir, got my words out eventually. And coming over the top of the hill, we are only just about able to close in and get that DRS detection, and that saved my race. That absolutely changed my race for the better going forward. And now we're in the DRS of Jarno, and we can start to work on closing in. Lap 27, the penultimate lap of the race, you can see that we're in the DRS and we're well in the fight for the podium. This is what is so critical. You can now see Lucas Blakely is P6, and he is with the cars up ahead at the moment, so he's probably about 4 seconds off the race lead, roughly. And he was close to them earlier in the race, but because Bari was ahead on the track, he got the pit stop priority, and this just shows how critical the strategy is in a wet race on F1 esports, that if you don't get the right pit stop lap, it just offsets your race so badly that it's really difficult to make anything back up later in the stint. So that's why it was so critical to get back ahead of Fabrizio. Otherwise, we would have had not the optimal strategy, and we wouldn't be in this position to fight for the podium right now. Final lap of the race, though. And I remember this so clearly in my mind. I knew the chance of catching Jarno off guard was quite low, nearly impossible actually, because we know how smart, how intelligent he is as a driver and a racer. So my strategy on this final lap is I just felt in the air that something was going to be dramatic, a crash was going to happen. So I decided to hang back a little bit on this final lap, save my battery, and give myself the opportunity to avoid an incident if there was to happen, and also to have a high battery level to go past people in the final parts of the lap if the opportunity arises. So you can see that we're hanging about half a second back from Jarno to give ourselves that gap in case there is an incident, to avoid them, like I've already said. And yes, you can see going down the back straight, I actually don't even take the slipstream. I move back over to the racing line so I can feel what's happening better. You can see Thomas goes down the inside of Bari, and this, I was watching, of course I don't have my POV, but I was watching this live, and I broke early, and I tried to get the best exit possible from this corner as I could. You can see now I've arrived. Jarno's gone past both of them, and now Jarno has gone from P3 to P1 in this race, and you can see I've undercutted switchback, I should say, Thomas Runhar, and now I'm drawing alongside of him, and look at this, 1, 2, 3, 4 cars in the space of about a tenth of a second in the final lap of an F1 esports race, and 3 of these people were championship contenders. I wasn't one of them, unfortunately, but you can see this is really why I had a decisive moment, and what really helped me to get a podium in this race. Spoiler alert, I know. Anyway, back to the point. I had a choice here that I could either try to go round the outside of Thomas and gain momentum on him that way, or go for the switchback and try to gain the position. Thomas went up the inside of Bari, what meant Bari was then vulnerable, and I was just about able to get a switchback on Bari, and that allowed me to carry momentum around the outside line and sweep into a podium paying position here on the final lap in Kota. And this was my first podium for Ferrari, so it meant all that matter more. You know, it meant so much to me. And coming across the line in the P3, you can see doing a little weave across the start finish line. And yeah, what a race, and really, really, what a good strategy behind the scenes as well. So thank you to the team, and thank you to the engineers for helping me along with that one, because that race was on point. Going from P6, falling to P8, and then getting back to P3 on the final lap. Critical, really critical strategy. The final race I'm going to be talking about in this video is going to be Japan 2022. You can see we fluffed qualifying. We're starting P17, but this was the infamous race where Jake Benham was really slowing people down to help Jarno Opmeer and did a fantastic job in that situation as well, right on the limit of the rulebook. And I think the rulebook was changed after this, actually, if I remember correctly. But yes. Of course, I didn't know this at that time, and I'm trying to do a good start to make up positions. You can see that we was actually able to go from P17 to P15 straight away. So we had an absolute rocket of a start, and now you can see in the background we're looking around the outside of Marcel Kiefer, and I don't even remember the start being that good to make up 2 positions. But anyway, cracking on, I ruined it because I spun. On the exit of turn 1, you're going to see I just lost the car, to be honest. It was a complete surprise that I lost the car, and yeah, I went from the P15 to P20 again. So, lovely jubbly, sound as a pound, right? But fortunately, I didn't pick up any damage from this situation and was able to carry on. And you could see already later in that lap, we're back up to P18 because Sebastian Job, Luke Smith, and Manuel also had damage, but I was still yet to overtake Manuel. You can see I'm all over the back end. Okay, now I do it right now. So in the space of 1 lap in F1 Esports in Japan, I went from P17 to P15 to P20 back to P17. So back where we started, right? Lovely jubbly. 2 seconds off the back of our Caraton. And what can we do? Lap 2, we are now actually ahead of Caraton because he boxed, but we are 3.3 seconds behind Jarno Opmeer. Lap 4, we are now 1.9 seconds behind. Lap 5, we are 1.3 seconds behind Jarno, and we are flying in this race. We was having a really nice race pace, and the car was just feeling perfect. And yeah, what an opportunity it is to have a good pace to make up some positions again. Lap 13, you can see now we are, actually you can't see the gap to Jarno. We are 8 tenths away from Jarno now. So in 13 laps, we've gone from spinning to getting back in the DRS of Jarno. And this is where I got quite lucky, actually, because we decided not to undercut. We decided to go longer in this race, and that was basically such a critical moment in the strategy, and quite a lucky moment in the strategy as well, because of course we didn't know what was going to happen with Jarno and Jake Benham, but we were just going for that overcut strategy, and it worked out perfectly. As you can see now, on lap 15, we've decided to box from what was on track like P3, P4, and now we're going to be going over to the medium compound tires. Jarno Opmeer is now leading the race. Jake Benham is P2, but this is where it's going to get a bit spicy for us and be a good opportunity going forward. And this is what I was talking about. Jake Benham was playing really gunner for Jarno Opmeer during this race and holding people up. Already, Jake is over 10 seconds behind Jarno, and you can see he's just slowing people up as much as possible. And I didn't really know what was going on at this point. All I could see that the cars were close together on the minimap, and I started to get around now the information what was happening with Jake. So I'm in P16, and I really have to start making some maneuvers to get back up the grid. This is a great opportunity for anyone to be making up positions when carnage is about to unfold in the race. And we knew with what's happening with Jake, carnage could have unfolded at any moment. And now looking at the timing tower, of course, now Jake is starting to get overtaken by a few cars, but now we're up into P14, and we've actually been able to undercut Jarno by 3.4 seconds in this race. So this is where my race starts to become alive, as Jake starts to fall down the field, and we start to get closer and closer and closer to him, and we start to gain opportunities. You can see Matthias is really far, right, not really far, really close behind, Jake Benham. Quick note on Matthias, he's such a lovely guy. Had the opportunity to be teammates with him in 2023/2024 season when I was in Alfa Romeo, and yeah, lovely guy, top level guy. You can see actually Daniel Bresnay spun behind all his carnage. I think he was side by side with Fabrizio, and I remember seeing that. I was like, oh, that's carnage. That's carnage. And now we're up into P13 in this race. And this is where everything starts to unfold absolutely perfectly for me, and we start to get quite lucky in some situations as well. There's actually 3 cars side by side here, and you're going to see we're going to make up 3 positions in one corner, and look, they just take each other out. We just lovely jubbly. This is absolutely fantastic. We make up 3 positions in one corner, and on top of that, we even still had the DRS to Marcel Kiefer. So that was absolutely lucky for us. There was a contact between Jarno Otmir and Fabrizio Donoso, what unfortunately basically sent Jarno spinning. And yeah, that was also lucky for us, to be honest, because Jarno had the fresher tyres. He probably would have re-overtaken us with those fresher tyres. But now we are P7 in the race. After starting P17, spinning on lap 1, and now getting back up into P7. Of course, the timing tower is on the right-hand side of the screen right now. Heading on into the final lap, of course, we're riding on board with Thomas, and we're not riding on board with ourselves because Thomas was fighting for the win. But if you look at the timing tower on the left-hand side, I'm 2 tenths behind Matthias, and this is a really key moment for me. You can see 1.5 tenths. We have a lap fresher tyres, and we're all over the back of him on this lap. And my only opportunity to overtake him is going to be into the final chicane. So you can see now, coming down the back straight, we're still on board with Thomas, but look at the timing tower on the left hand side. You can see we are 1.8 tenths behind, 1.6, 1.5 almost, and we're going to go around the outside of him in the chicane. It's not on the broadcast, it's not on the camera, but we was just about able to sneak ahead of him in this race and go from what was P20 at one point all the way back up to P6, and we just about took P6 by 0.017 across the start finish line, and that was absolutely critical for us. So those have been my favorite F1 esports races, hopefully giving you an insight, a feeling to how I felt during the race and how I feel about it now as well, looking back. For me, it's been a fun video to make anyway, so hopefully you're enjoying the content. Hopefully it was a really nice video for you to enjoy as well. With all of that being said, thank you so much for watching, and I will catch you in the next video. Grazie, ciao ciao, bye bye.